Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining the External Provider Interface meeting. Today you will hear from Sheila Mott, the iConnect training coordinator lead and the organizational change manager. You'll also be hearing from Sharam Komu, our Chief Information Officer, and any documentation that you see you will receive after the meeting. Also, the webinar is going to be recorded and will be posted on the website for you to view at a later date if you want to go back and listen. I really do appreciate, and I know that it's taking an hour out of your time, but I do appreciate you attending this. This is the beginning of our monthly meetings to start the conversation of the external provider interface. So those that have a system that would like to interface with iConnect, you will be learning over the course of several months in testing how to modify your system so that you can interface with iConnect. So right now I am going to turn it over to Sheila. Thank you very much for attending.
Thanks, Lisa, and good morning, everybody. As Lisa said, we're going to start this conversation about the external provider interface with APD iConnect. Before I start going over the documents with you, I think for many of you that are online, this might be brand new information. And so I just wanted to provide a little bit of information of what the external provider interface is and does. Specifically, the interface is designed for those providers who currently have their own system, whether it's a system that you've created or if you contract out with another vendor to have a system for your electronic health records or EHR. So for example, if you have a system that you use that you've created, that you create all of your service logs in, as an example, the external provider interface is intended to allow you to be able to export that service log data from your system and import it into APD iConnect. So that's what it's for. We have a lot of folks that are on the call with us today and some that are still joining. So I wanted to put that out there because if you don't have a system already, then this may not be something that will be necessary for you. You're absolutely welcome to stay and receive the information, but I just wanted to make sure that everybody understands that this is not necessarily something that will apply to every single provider who is going to use APD iConnect. So to state that again, if you have a system that you currently use, a database system of your own design, or you contract out with a provider that does your electronic health records, then what the external provider interface will do will allow you to send certain information from your existing system into APD iConnect. If you don't have a system, then this may not apply to you. And again, you're welcome to stay and gather the information. But I just wanted to make sure if some of what I'm saying makes absolutely no sense to you because you don't have an existing system, that's why. And you're not required to create one. You'll be able to do everything that you need to do directly in APD iConnect. You do not have to create your own system to use the interface. So that's point one. The other thing that I like to make folks aware of right away, because I typically get emails after a webinar presentation like this. This is a presentation for information only. This is not a training. There are not certificates or in-service credits that are being offered for this. So please sit back, enjoy, take the information, ask your questions. We will probably take the greater part of the time that we've scheduled and may not be able to get to all of the questions today, but we will certainly send the responses out afterwards. And as Lisa said a few minutes ago, we're going to be starting to have regular meetings, monthly meetings, to talk about some of the technical issues in terms of the information that we're going to go over today. So there's plenty of time to be able to get to questions if we don't get to all of them today. So with that being said, let me go ahead and share my screen with you. And you should all be able to see a Word document. And again, we will be sending all of the documents we're going to go over today. We'll be sending those out after the webinar, so you will have this information for your reference. What this document here is our training guide for providers in terms of the steps that you will need to take to modify your existing system to be able to export data so that you can import it into APDI Connect. APD has worked with our vendor WellSky to create this external provider interface, and in order for the data to be able to be accepted, it has to come in a specific format. And so what this document does, you can see that there's 2 chapters that are set up that are in here for you, and it will walk you through exactly what it is that you need to do in terms of getting your file, your export file set up. And so let me just pause and talk about the export file. In order for your data to be able to be imported into APDI Connect, it has to be in an XML file. So for those providers who do currently have an existing system, you've created your own database, you want to continue to use your database system, but you know that that information needs to come into APDI Connect. What you will be looking at is how can you modify your existing database system to be able to export the data in this XML file format so that APDI Connect can receive it and put it into the system. And I'm going to demonstrate what that looks like in just a few minutes. So it might all seem very theoretical right now, but I just want to go through some of the basics before we get to the demonstration part. So again, what this document does is it gives you an example of what the XML file will look like, and it will also talk about the data elements that you need to have in terms of what's in your system versus what needs to come into our system. And we're going to give you this document plus another example XML file mapping. So let me just scroll down a little bit here and show you some of the iConnect fields that we're talking about. And for you to be able to create that XML file, how that translates to an XML tag and whether or not it's required, and additional information in terms of how it has to be formatted, those kinds of things. This information right here is also going to be provided to you on this spreadsheet here. So this is the exact same thing that has our field labels, the XML tags, and again, if you are an agency owner and some of this seems a little technical above your head, because I know some of it's definitely above my head, definitely get in touch with your IT people in your agency or the IT people with the vendor that you work with, because this will make sense to the folks that do the technical stuff behind the scenes. But essentially what it means is, and I'll just use one as an example, almost every system is going to have consumer first name and consumer last name. You might call it something different, but that's what it means. And so in order for you to export that data from your system, you need to also have it identified as an XML tag set up just like this with the less than sign and the first name and then the greater than sign, and the same with last name. That is what the XML tag means. So when you're exporting consumer first name out of your system, it's going to show up in the XML file with this tag associated. Let me give you an example. Let me blow this up just a little bit. Here you can see, here's the XML tag for first name, and then we've got Tony's actual name. So this is what's being exported out of your system, and then the end of the XML tag to be able to mark that Tony is all of the data, and that's where that data string ends. Same for last name. we've got the XML tag, and then we have doe, and then we've got the ending of the string with the other half of the XML tag to show that doe is all of the data that needs to be transmitted. So that's what this information means here. And you're going to see that some of the things, like I said, you've already got this. You've got consumer first name and last name in your system, however you have it set up. Whether it's an Access database, whether you're doing it on spreadsheets, you have it all set up. Case number, however, might be something that we all do differently. Some folks may still be using the Social Security number. Some folks may be using the iBudget PIN number. But in iConnect, it is actually the consumer's iConnect ID. So some information you won't already have. We're going to need to help you get that information. And so this is where I'm going to jump a little bit away from the documents. We're going to come back to this, but I want to show you that we've already thought about, well, how are you going to get that information? How are you going to know things like the case number for somebody in iConnect, or these other values here, like the authorization ID and authorized service ID and those kinds of things? That information is all already in iConnect, and we have the ability for you as providers to be able to go and pull that information in. So let me go ahead and switch over to our test site. And so here I am in a provider record, and we have the ability from within the provider record on the authorizations tab to run a report called the external provider activity import data. And you click on that, and then you have the ability to put in the authorization start and end date. And our authorizations, as I think all of you realize now that we have authorizations that have been issued, the iConnect authorizations are for the entire year. So you'll want to change the start date to 7/1 for your fiscal year, and then your end date will be June 30th for the following year. And then you'll also want to go ahead and select fully approved and partially approved, all of the different types of approved, so that you're able to get all of that data. Now, I'm not going to actually execute this here because since it is our test site, we do actually have some real data in here. So I want to make sure that we're just using our example data. I ran this report a little bit earlier, and I'll show you what it looks like when you run the report and you export it. So I ran that report in iConnect, and then I exported it to an Excel spreadsheet so that I could have it and look at it. And what that does is you'll see on row 2, and I can blow this up just a little bit to make sure everyone can see it. We've given you the XML tags. So when you're looking at any kinds of adjustments that you may need to make in your system, you have those XML tags. We've given you what the submitter ID needs to be for your agency. We've given you the authorization ID. And so you've got our field labels at the top, which, as you recall, when we were looking at it over here, that's this information that's in this first column. So we've got that, case number, consumer first name, all of that field label data in the report is across the top. And then the XML tag that is associated with it is listed on row 2. And then for each consumer, you have the information. So I'm going to go ahead and use Janie Doe as my example. So you'll see that Janie Doe is on here twice. She is the same consumer. How can we tell? Because Doe is a pretty common last name, in this case in particular. You can tell by that case number. This is her iConnect ID. That's how she's identified in the system. It is a unique identifier that is system generated. So no two consumers will have the same iConnect ID. And then when you look at the authorization ID, and this is just something that is specific to iConnect, the way that our authorizations are generated, and some of you have probably already seen this on the authorizations that were issued to you by the support coordinators. But if you provide more than one service to a consumer, then the way iConnect works, our functionality for the authorizations is that there is one authorization for the provider. So that would be the authorization ID, but then each service has its own authorization, which is where the prior authorization number or the PA number from FIMIS is located. So you think of this as like the parent record, and then each of the authorized services are children records on that authorization ID. So in this case here, Janie receives 2 services from this provider. And those 2 services each have their own authorized service ID or auth service ID, and they are linked together through this parent authorization ID. So that's why these are fields that you're going to most likely, you may have something in your system for authorization, for example, but you may have to take a look at how that's set up in your system, and do you need to relabel it? Or maybe you're just calling it authorization, or maybe you're calling it PA number or something associated with the service, as long as it's got so a place for you to add that auth service ID, because this is the actual data that you're going to need to have in your system to be able to export it out so that we can receive it in APD iConnect. So this will most likely be a field that many of you will have to add to your existing systems. Again, you may already have an authorization field. What you put in it may change based upon the way the iConnect authorization works. And then if we scroll to the side, you'll see that there is additional information. And though some of it is not included in the XML file, we include that information. So since I ran this report, it's my name that came up here, and then the worker ID that goes with that. But the other important information is that vendor service ID. And again, this is how services are identified in iConnect. And so you have to have that data to be able to put that in your system so that when you export it out, iConnect is able to receive it and understand it. So that's how we're going to get the information that exists in iConnect out so that you can take it, and then taking a look, going back to our document, working through all of the steps that you need to work through to be able to modify your existing system so that you're able to create an XML file that can be exported and received in APD iConnect. Now, with that being said, some of you may look at this and decide, yeah, I don't know that I want to invest the time or the resources into that kind of modification. And again, you don't have to. Using the external provider interface is completely optional. You will always have the ability, once we go live and roll iConnect out to providers, you will have the ability to log in directly and enter the information directly into iConnect. So that is a business decision that providers are going to make for themselves. The external provider interface is something that's being offered for those folks who want to use it, but it is not a requirement. So I just want to stress that. The external provider activity import report, how I did that report that I just ran, the instructions for how to run it are right here, so that when you do have access to APD iConnect, you'll be able to see this. You don't have to remember all of the steps that I just went through in a very short period of time. We're going to provide that information to you. The other thing that I did want to mention is that once you have APD iConnect access, one of the things that you do have to do, there is a little bit of work that agency owners and solo providers will have to do in terms of your worker record. And a worker record is when you log into APD iConnect the first time, a worker record will be created for you for your business, whether you're an agency provider or a solo provider. And that will all be done through the login process. But you will have to then go in and modify your record so that you're able to upload and download HIPAA files. It's very simple, easy to do, but we have included those instructions for you and some screenshots showing you exactly how to do that. It's as simple as getting to your worker record and then opening it and checking these two little boxes. So again, not anything you have to know today, but I do want to make sure that we mention this, and we'll probably mention it from time to time because that'll be the very first thing that folks will ask when I tried to import a file and I didn't have the menu option on my dashboard. Well, if you don't have the menu option on your dashboard, and I'll show you what that means in a few minutes, that means that you need to come into the worker record. And this will have to be done for everybody in your agency that will have the ability to import an XML file into APDI Connect. So it might be just you as the agency owner, it might be you and your business office manager, but this step here will have to be completed for each worker that you want to give the ability to import data into the system. So I just wanted to mention that. And then this document also goes through all of the steps for how to log in. And again, I know that we have not launched APDI Connect for providers yet, and so you've not seen this screen. Some of you may have gone through training already. We just completed our training for our respite providers, and this week we've started our training for our personal supports providers. So some of this may look a little bit familiar. If you've not had training yet, don't panic, because this is not about how to use iConnect. Really, the focus is on if you have a system that you currently are using for your electronic health records, your EHR data, and you want to modify your system to be able to use the external provider interface. That's what today is about. So it's not about really understanding how iConnect per se works. I am going to show you a little bit of information, or a little bit of demonstration to show you a little bit so that some of the pieces will click for you. But I just want you to know what's in this document that we're going to send out to you, because this, as you start to work on your system, and you create your XML file, one of the things that we are going to have to do is give you the ability to be able to test that XML file. And so this information here, in terms of how to upload the XML file, how to view the activity once you've uploaded the XML file, and I'm going to demonstrate all of this, so we're not going to go through it page by page, but I just want you to know that that information is here and it will be useful to you further down the road. Where we are today, though, really rests in the XML file mapping, because again, this is where you're going to start as providers. All of this is happening outside of APDI Connect. This is what you're going to do with your system so that you're able to export data from your system into APDI Connect. On this spreadsheet, we have also included several different samples or examples. So here is an example of what the XML file would look like for one consumer with one start date and one end date and time. We've also given you examples for, let's scroll up. This one is multiple start and end dates and times. Same consumer. So in this example here, Tony Doe, let me make that just a little bit bigger. Tony Doe received a service, you see start date, on July 6th, but he also received another service on July 7th. So in this example, we're exporting multiple records from your system and then importing it into APDI Connect. Our other examples, we tried to anticipate all the different scenarios that providers might want to use the external provider interface for. So our other examples include different contact types. So what that means is that you might have a service log and an annual report. And I don't know if those go together on any particular service, but I just made that up. So if, for example, you provide a service that requires a service log, actually, I'll use a better example. if you provide a service that requires a service log and a progress note, you have the ability to list both of them together in this one record that you would be exporting from your system and importing into APDI Connect. This example here actually shows that it's a progress note and a quarterly summary. But again, if it was a progress note and a service log, you would be able to list both of those here. And then on this example, this is to be able to, which I think this is the example most of you will be looking for, is sending multiple consumers. So let's just say, for example, in this case, Tony Doe received a service, and I like to just show you because as you start looking at this, it'll make sense to you. You'll be able to see Tony Doe received a service on July 10th, and here is the authorization information, which remember, you got on this report, we exported from APDI Connect. So that's where that data comes into play. So Tony received that service on July 10th. If we scroll down, we also see that Tony's sister Luce also received a service on July 6th. So again, if you're keeping your data in your system, then you're able to export it all into, or you should be able to, once you make the modifications to your system, export for all consumers into one XML file and be able to import that all at once into APDI Connect. And then our last example that we gave you is the same consumer and two different services. So for example, if you provide personal supports and you provide transportation, you're able to include the documentation for both of those services for Tony Doe, all in the same XML file. We think that giving you these examples of what the file would look like, it will help you as you're modifying your existing system and starting to do your own XML file exporting so that you can look at it, and as long as it's looking like this, then it should be able to be imported without any issues. And that's a should. That's where the testing of your product is going to, your export is going to have to come into play. Also, just to kind of share with you one of the other ways that we can look at it, and I like this one so much better because it's color coded. This is using the very same layout, but using a notepad. A notepad. I think this is Notepad++ is the application that I'm using here. Taking the exact same thing, nesting all of the data so that we're able to see it. We're actually going to import this file as part of the demonstration. But I just want to go through it. So in theory, I'm a provider. I have my own system, and I've been entering, in this case, Elizabeth Doe's service log data in my system. And I want to continue to use my system even after I go live for APDI Connect as a provider. So I'm going to continue to keep my service log data in the system that I've created, but what I've done is I've modified my system so that I can export from my system into this XML file. And so I've hit the export button, and this is what was generated. It includes that submitter ID that I showed you on the other screen. It includes Elizabeth's iConnect ID, and it has our date and time of service, when it started, when it ended. It has that authorization information that I pulled from that report, has the worker ID, status for the record is complete. I can send it in pending status, and that way it will import into APDI Connect and it would be editable. But the reality is that I've already done all of the edits that I want to do in my system. And the whole point of using the external provider interface is to be able to just submit it into APDI Connect, and then it's there and done. So if we send it as complete status, it enters into APDI Connect as a read-only file, and everything, nothing is editable. I've got my provider ID number, that vendor service ID that I showed you on the other report, that's right here. And you can see that we have a lot of required fields. So you absolutely must have that data match exactly as our data exists in APDI Connect. That's why it's so important to use that report that I showed you, you pull right out of APDI Connect. And then there are some tags, I do want to mention this, there are some tags that they are system required tags, but they don't have to have data in it. And that's just because the external provider interface is used by more than one client of WellSky. So you have to make sure that you have, for lack of a better term, I'm going to be very non-technical here, a holding place for that XML tag. You just put the XML tag in your export, doesn't have to have any data in it, it will be fine. And then in the group note tag is where I've actually listed, you can see here, I've started with the person-centered support plan goal. I've listed the information that I've already entered in my system as the service log data itself. And I've noted here that it's service log. So this is all of the information about Elizabeth that I entered into my system. So I've created this XML file, and I'm going to go ahead and import it into the system. So let's go ahead and try that. So here I am logged in to our test site, and I am using the service provider role. And over here, you see I've got this My Files area, and I'm going to upload an XML file. It won't look like this for you. I do a lot of testing, so I'm associated with lots of providers. When you're in iConnect, you're only going to see your agency. My file type is activities import. And then because I've already saved this on my computer, I'm going to pull, and I've got to make sure I find the right one. This is the one that I just showed you. I'm going to pull this file in. So I've browsed it, I pulled it off my computer. So again, in theory, I've exported it out of my other system and I've saved it to my desktop. And now I'm going to pull it from my desktop and upload it into APDI Connect. It's spinning, it's always encouraging. Ta-da! I hold my breath when I do that because sometimes I have a typo in these files because I'm doing them manually and they don't import quite the way that I think they will. So that's the success right there. That's what everybody wants to see. Let me show you what that did actually in the system. I'm going to go back over here and I'm going to pull Elizabeth's ID. And I'm going to pull up her record. So remember that on this file here, this was a July 5th service that I started at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And my documentation starts with PCSP goal. So let's go ahead and have a look at that. Now I've been doing a lot of testing, but here is the July 5th one. And when we open it, you can see it starts at 1 o'clock. And here is that data that I had typed down in that group note field on my XML tag. It's as simple as that. So that is importing one consumer. I do have, let me go ahead and close that. Do have another example that I wanted to share with you. So in this case, Jessica Doe is receiving a service on July 15th. And again, here's all of that data. Now on this one for the group note, I just put this because what I wanted to demonstrate to you is that I'm going to import for 2 consumers in one XML file. So this isn't actual service log data, but we're going to import for Jessica on July 15th, and we're going to import for Elizabeth on July 16th, and hers will also say adding records for 2 consumers. So let's go ahead and do that one. And this is going to be the 715. So we're going to go back here to that upload, and let me find the right file. 715. And upload. Ta-da, that one went much faster. So let's just verify that the data is there. Let me refresh Elizabeth's. And here you can see Elizabeth has one for the 16th, adding 2 consumers with 1 XML file right here. So that's Elizabeth's record. Let's go ahead and grab Jessica's iConnect ID. And we'll search hers as well. And we go to her provider documentation. And here is her July 15th, adding records for 2 consumers at the same time. So again, what this does for you is it gives you the ability to continue to keep your service log data in your system, export it from your system, and import it into iConnect. You still have the ability to log into iConnect and manually add in this information. Again, if you're a provider that doesn't have a system, then you'll be able to log in. Let me just go ahead and show you what that means. Close a couple of these extra windows. So what that means is that if I'm a provider that doesn't have a system that wants to use the external provider interface, I can just come here and add that record, provider documentation. I can go ahead and choose to do, let's say I'm doing last week's documentation. I can choose all of the data elements right here from where I am. Have to get my authorization. So remember, that is, and again, this looks a little different because I am in a test site. For you, it will default to you automatically. That should have gone. Let's try it that way. Let's grab that auth ID. Sorry about that, you guys. There it is. So you see I was able to pull the authorization. I'm able to pull the service. It's got the time. And so this is how you would be entering that data manually. Service log, click on that. This is what we refer to, again, because I know many of you have not received training yet. Just to give you a quick tour, this is what we refer to as a multi-select field. And that means that if this was a service log and a progress note, I can highlight both of them and move them over, meeting my handbook requirement for this particular service. And I know for personal supports, that's not the case. But if this was a service that required both a service log and a progress note, I'm able to pull both of those over, and then I'm able to type in the service log details here and file, save, and close. So this is just the documentation component for the service delivery. And again, if you are a provider that doesn't have your own system, this is how you'll be able to enter your service logs in APD iConnect. If you are a provider that has a system that you want to look at how do you export data out of your existing system and import it into APD iConnect, these are the steps that you're going to go through. just to talk a little bit about the data that can be included in the external provider interface, it is all data that would land on one of these screens. So that's real important to look at. I know that there are other types of data that everybody collects and everybody documents and tracks, but in terms of documentation, what we are looking for are these types of documentation. So an annual report, a monthly daily attendance log, progress note, the monthly room and board, that one probably won't apply until later, trip logs, quarterly summaries. That's the type of information that you would be exporting from your system into APD iConnect via the external provider interface. And again, this was all intended just to be a quick overview. We're going to send you this information so that you can take it in, digest it, sit down with your technical people and talk about the nuts and bolts and those kinds of things to decide, is this something that your company, your business wants to pursue? So we do have another document that we're going to go over. I'm going to pull that document up. And then Sriram, I'm going to turn it over to you to talk us through this document.
Thank you, Sheila. That was an excellent presentation. So can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. So as Sheila explained, while XML file allows the providers, to transfer the activity data, different types of activities such as service log, trip log, attendance log, daily progress notes, quarterly summary, annual summary, and so the 837 file, allows the providers to transfer the claims data. So the difference is the XML file, it's a custom designed interface file format for allowing the providers, to send the activity data. The 837 is a widely used, accepted industry standard X12 file format, which if you have systems, most of you have systems, your technical teams, are well acquainted, with this file format. It's the advantage is it's not any different in terms of the file format, the way the transaction sets are defined, the loops, segments, or the data elements. So I think that will be very helpful, in terms of the work effort on the provider side, because most of you probably have already a program or a system component that generates this 837 standard file. And also, we are aware that some of you already send in your current process the 837 claims data to MMIS system, FEMIS system. So this is this 837 that we are going to provide you after the meeting. So this is not different in terms of any format or the structures. Of course, there will be some identifiers such as, submitter ID or other identifier information will definitely, be different because, you will need to send it to the APD iConnect system as opposed to the MMIS system. So in that sense, yeah, there are some differences in terms of the data values that you will be sending in this 837, but in terms of the structure, file format, all of that, it's not different. And also, if you already have a system or a program, that generates this file, you won't need to do much work in terms of changing that, except that some tweaks are necessary to provide this file for us. So, and of course, this is a detailed document, around 50 pages of document. So, and it will give you all the details, what exactly needs to be sent in that 837. So that should provide adequate details, for your technical teams, what changes that need to be done on your programs. So I won't be going over that, but definitely, we will be happy to answer your questions, once your technical teams, review this document, and any follow-up questions. Just to quickly take you through, Sheila, if you could go to the page 7, and from page 7, you will see, yeah, if you scroll down one more page, yeah. So this is where it starts, the details of this, the transaction sets, and also if you could browse through quickly, Sheila, all the way through page 30. So that's the details that your technical team members, will need to review and understand, what all the changes that you will need to do, and also in terms of the data, what specific data we are expecting, in this file format. So I think, and then if you go to the page 35 or 36, Sheila, we have provided some sample files. So yeah, so sample files are provided that will give you some more help in terms of understanding, what we are expecting when you are ready to send the 837 data files. Yeah, can you also go to page 40, Sheila, 40 or 41? Yeah, this is where, that will give you little bit more details, what we are exactly talking about. So so this document, should give all the information in terms of what changes to be done on your side. So once you are ready from your side, let's say you have generated a test 837, we are going to provide you the information, how to test that. From January onwards, we will have the secure FTP environment ready. So, and you will be able to send the files, or upload the files to the secure FTP environment by using your side in automated job or manually, and the process will let us download your files and process the files, and we will be able to send the response files. So but before January, if you are ready with your test files a little bit before, you can still send your test 837 via an email address that we are going to provide you. So in a secure email, we can process on this side, and we will send you the response files, via, again, in a secure email. So, and also I would like to just talk about a couple of minutes on what response files that we are going to send. Once you have uploaded 837 file, you will receive within a few hours or max within a day an acknowledgement file, which is also called 999, that will tell you the success of the file, if we accepted the file or if there are any errors and all. And also after a certain time period, most likely a week or so, once the MMIS financial processing cycle is done, we will be able to send you the 835s, and which is you are most of you are aware of that, the 837, the remittance / the payment information. So we will be sending you after we receive the 835 data from FEMIS to iConnect, and then we will be sending your individual 835 files. So and also even on the FEMIS web portal side, if some providers are already receiving 835s by their access through the web portal, they will still continue to have access to that 835 files even after they start sending claims through iConnect. So in both ways, you will get that. So, and also, the secure FTP, once we have that ready, and we will be communicating to you with the complete instructions, how to set up your access to APD secure FTP environment. And also if you have any questions, you can always reach out to the email address that we will be providing, and we can respond to you. So I think that's what I wanted to cover quickly, on the 837. But definitely, please reach out to us, if you have further questions, once you review the documents. So thank you. So I'll turn it over to Zoe.
Thanks, Sriram. I'll go ahead and I'll take it back for a quick minute,
Yeah.
Sriram. Thank you. That was really helpful. I wanted to just take a couple of seconds and say, if you're like me and you're going, what is that stuff on the screen? Because you know what? I have never seen an 837 file before. If you've never seen an 837 file before, that means that you probably are not submitting your claims through the FEMIS portal right now via an 837 file. I just want to let you know, because again, I know not everyone has gone through training. You're not required to. You will be able to submit your claims directly without an 837 file. This information is being provided so that providers who do submit 837s have the information that they need to make any kind of modifications that they may have to make in order for their 837 to be imported into APD iConnect. Because that's where, if we go back over here real quick to my dashboard, remember when I was uploading my file and I got to this screen, remember the file types, one of those file types is the 837. So if you are a provider that uses an 837, then that's where this document comes in handy for you, because again, if there are any modifications that you may need to make to your existing 837 file format, then this document here has that information. Again, if you're a provider that doesn't use an 837, you do not have to. You don't have to change anything. So if you're sitting there panicking right now, you can relax, because this is not a requirement. The other thing that I want to stress is that this does not mean that we are moving claims to APD iConnect yet. So again, I know that many of you have not received training. I don't want anyone to panic like, oh my God, I don't even have an iConnect account. How am I going to submit my claims? None of that is happening. This is information to help people get ready. So if you are in a panic, take a great big deep breath. It's all going to be fine. There's plenty of time to sort through this information. I know that as we were getting started, Lisa had indicated that we're going to be starting monthly meetings. And so if you are a provider that will be wanting to use the external provider interface, or you are using 837 files and you have questions after you've reviewed these documents, met with your technical people, that will be the time. And bring your technical people with you. And we will start having these kinds of meetings to help you figure out what it is that you need to do to be able to modify your existing systems, so that when it is time for this stuff to go live in APD iConnect, you are good to go and you've tested it out and everything works swimmingly for you. So Zoe, I know that we had planned on taking some time for questions, but I think we're right up at the end. I'll turn it over to you, but before I do that, I just want to let everybody know that I know that there have been questions coming in. We will be able to get responses back to you. And if you have other questions or think of other questions after the webinar is over, you can always email us at iconnect@apdcares.org. And again, that is iconnect@apdcares.org. So I think Zoe, Lisa, we're right at 11:58. So I think this is probably a good stopping point, and we'll just have to send the responses to the questions afterwards.
Thank you, Sheila.
Lisa, any final words?
No, I appreciate everybody's attendance and attention to all of the very detailed documents that Sheila and Saram have gone over. And as Sheila said, if you have questions, and Sharam, if you have questions, please email them to the APD iConnect or mailbox, and it's iconnect@apdcares.org. Thank you, and everyone have a good day.
Thanks, everyone.